Woohoo, no pun intended. Episode number, is it 32, 33, something like that? We thank everyone for joining us week after week. I'm joined as always, by National Master Matthew Jensen. Matt, thanks for joining us today. How's it going?
Going really well, Jesse. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great. I'm a little sleepy, a little tired. It's been a long day. I think we're both kind of feeling it, but we like doing the podcast. The podcast always energizes me. Like I'm always feeling drowsy. I come on, I'm performing kind of, and I don't know, I just like talking to everybody and sharing the world of chess. If you want to share the world of chess, you can give this podcast a like or a subscribe or a rating. See how I slip that in there, Matt?
That was
And
smooth.
yeah, very smooth. And all of those things really, we really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. And let's jump into it. So, what are we discussing this week? Hans Niemann, of course. But first, let me start with a little story that reminds me of good old Hans Niemann. So, the day is October 28th, 2017. It's about 7 years ago. And there's a guy in the UFC who is doing well, but he's kind of boring, right? So he's winning his fights, but he's wrestling a lot. Well, he gets matched against a former champ, and this is Damian Maia he's matched up against. They're fighting in Damian Maia's home country of Brazil. Okay, so who I'm talking about is Colby Covington. So before the fight, Dana White comes up to Colby Covington and says, like, listen, you're boring. No one likes your fight style. I know you're fighting Damian Maia. It's probably the biggest fight of your career, but whatever happens tonight, I'm sorry to say, but we're going to cut you because it just doesn't make sense. We have limited amount of space on the roster. So after this fight, I'm sorry, but we're going to cut ties. This is your last fight on the contract, and we're not going to be renewing your contract. Best of luck out there tonight. So Colby goes out and puts on an absolute dominant performance. So this is 7 years ago. Two judges gave him a 10-8, which is pretty uncommon, especially back then. So he wins unanimous decision 30-26, 30-27, 29-27. And it was a good fight. But what happened after is what made Colby Covington the name that you recognize today if you follow MMA at all. So he gets on the mic and he just starts trashing the country of Brazil. He says, "This is the worst, crap hole country I've ever heard of. Like, just your women are ugly. Everyone's poor. Everyone's trashy. This is the worst place ever." And Brazil just goes into a huge riot, hating Colby Covington. And that is the moment where he turned into a heel. And Hans Niemann is our chess heel, I gotta say. Who is doing what Hans Niemann is doing today? No one challenges people to one-on-one, no-scope 360, heads-up for rolls matches. And Hans Niemann is doing it. What do you think of the story, Matt?
I loved it, and I think it's a great comparison because I only know of Cole because of how he acts now and that persona that he's built. So it makes complete sense.
Yep. So he's one of the few people who can headline a pay per view without it being a title fight. So he fought Jorge Masvidal a while ago, and that was the main event of a pay per view, even though there's no title on the line. Which is probably why he won because he can't actually win fights when title is on the line. Sorry, Colby. But he is a huge name, one of the biggest draws in the sport, and he made all that just by slightly twisting his personality and being not becoming like a good guy like a Fabiano Caruana, but being just really out there. And there's no one on the chess scene doing that other than Hans. And Hans would say, "Oh, I'm not being a heel. I'm just like the best player. The chess speaks for itself." But he totally drums up the drama and he knows it when he says stuff like the chess speaks for itself, or like all his tweets like kind of like baiting Levy. It's like, I finished like ninth place, where did you finish after he lost? So he's drumming up for real. He knows what he's doing. You may as well just own it. But he is crushing it. So he just finished a match against Anish Giri, and he played very well. So in the Blitz, he won pretty easily. I want to say it was a 12-game match. It was like six, 7.5, 4.5, something like that. I think was the final for Blitz, and then that was all in one day. Then they played. Then they played classical. We'll get to classical in a sec. And then they played rapid, and in the last day of rapid, it was 6 games, and I'm pretty sure everyone won their games with white. So 6 decisive games, 6 wins, and they split them 3-3. But in the classical, which I think everyone was most curious about, Hans, um, on the first day he lost and drew. On the second day he won both, and then on the third day I believe there was two draws. Is that right, Matt? Some I think that's right.
Yep, I'm looking right now. So the total score was 2 wins for Hans, one for Anish, and 3 draws. Is that what you have in your notes?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Or that's what I said. So I'm glad that I got it right. Thanks for fact checking. Um, so he gains a rating against Anish. And not only does he play Anish, he travels to Anish. He goes to the Netherlands. He organizes the prize fund. He organizes the venue. He does all of this stuff just to get some games in because he's frustrated he's not getting invited to these major events. So I think he picked up maybe 6 points or 8 points against Anish. He turns around after, like, in the middle of this match, after I think two games of classical, and plays the SCC. And what does he do? He beats Wesley So. Not many people beat Wesley So. In fact, Wesley has only lost to Naka and Carlson in the SCC, I'm pretty sure. So he joins that crew. And in doing so, in beating Wesley, he stamps his ticket to Paris, where he is facing, in the SCC semifinals, none other than Magnus Carlsen. You couldn't have written it any better. I'm so excited for that match.
And I watched the interview with Magnus
Oh, yeah?
after he won his match. He gives bad interviews sometimes where he just seems disinterested. He almost seemed depressed, Jesse. Like he did not want any part of that interview. And I think it's because he knows because he won that match, he has to go on to face Hans. And he even said in the interview, he goes, I wish it wasn't Hans.
Yep.
I'll be honest, but he's got to face him. He can't dodge him now. And I think the tough thing is Magnus is still a huge favorite in this format because they're going to go back to the standard FCC time control. So it's going to be 30 games, 20 of them blitz, 10 of them bullet. And really, Magnus should win this probably by 6 or 7 points. But it's Hans, and the psychology is going to play a factor.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to give massive kudos to GM Hess because that interview was tough. And he did a really good job of asking the questions that we all wanted to hear, also keeping it light and not being, I guess, like dissuaded by Magnus, who was totally not checked out, but not wanting to be there at all. Like you could tell he wanted to talk about anything else in the world. Okay, and one other thing. Magnus dropped a little hint, a little sprinkle that I don't think anyone was expecting. So Magnus is making a documentary on the whole Hans cheating scandal. And that kind of blew my mind. And I immediately go into conspiracy mode. Okay. Before I get into my conspiracy, I want to hear your thoughts on the documentary. What do you think it's going to be?
Well, I wasn't sure if it was created by the Magnus team. I wasn't sure if it was completely independent or if chess.com has a hand in it. I have no information at all on this documentary. But I'm interested to hear your conspiracy theory.
So I think chess.com is involved only because Danny said something like, "Okay, well the leak is out there, the documentary is confirmed." Like it sounded like he had knowledge of the documentary beforehand. Okay, so here's my theory. My theory, and this is completely made up. Disclaimer: I don't have any info here. I'm completely 100% spitballing for fun. Okay, so what if, hear me out, Matt. What if
Yeah.
Magnus knows that Hans was actually cheating over the board? What if he knows and he has some serious tell, like he really has some proof even that Hans has been cheating in some way, but he can't let the cat out of the bag. He can't spill the beans. So he tells everyone, listen, we need to be business as usual so we can catch Hans red-handed. So we need to invite Hans to the SEC. We need to invite him back into these over the board events. We need to get two proctors during the SEC to see if he's doing the thing that I think he's doing, gathering more info, and that is going in the documentary. And they're going to bust him red handed. And Hans is actually 2350 IM, shouldn't be anywhere near the GMs.
I like it. And let me add a little to your conspiracy theory.
Yes, yes.
I was trying to think like last week when he won this match. How could Hans possibly cheat if he is a cheater across all different time controls, different locations,
Over the board and
both
online.
online?
Yep.
Yep, over the board. How could he possibly cheat in all of these different arenas and still keep it like playing around his 2730 level, 2750, whatever he's at? I started researching a little bit and not on different types of plugs. I went a different angle with this one.
Okay.
They have, and this is from a couple years ago, contact lenses that look a little like computer chips. Like they don't look like a normal contact lens that actually have cameras in them. Now, if you had contacts that had cameras and you had a device somehow that was picking up the moves on the board, which wouldn't be that unheard of, and somehow relaying you the move to play, this could work. And when I was reading this article, I was saying essentially the technology is there. All they need to do is get them to look like pupils, right? Just get them to look like a hazel colored eye, a blue eye, whatever it is. And boom, you're there. Like you wouldn't even need big glasses that have a built-in like camera from Facebook or whatever. That'd be too obvious. If you had contacts with cameras, then there's one other thing. They do make earpieces that are so small that they go way down into your eardrum. But I don't think that's as good as the contacts because the contacts you could literally just be sitting there watching the board, have it set up for 2D and 3D, doesn't matter the time control, and all you need is something to tell you the moves back. And if you're close enough to 2700, you can pick and choose when you use the moves.
Yep, absolutely. And you just need like a couple of the top moves there, maybe some evals. And with AI capabilities, this is a piece of cake. Just like look at a chessboard. I mean, this already exists on if you go to Reddit, you can just get a picture of a board and I can't remember, it's like Chess Vision Bot or something. We'll post a link from like here's chess.com, here's Lee Chess, and has the analysis board, black to move, white to move, and it even like gives you the best move, like just from an image. And
Yeah,
there's no question you can do that in 3D world as well. All that being said, I don't believe it. I think Hans is clean and I think Hans is legit. And I'm mostly just like having fun here. I don't think he's cheating. It seems too impossible.
I agree with you. I also think he's legit. I think he's proving it with these matches he's doing as well. Like he's just showing that he's strong in all formats. But it is kind of fun to entertain the thought of not only would Magnus come out and say, "Here, I have proof that Hans cheated," but it would also be fun if the other angle worked. If Hans won it all and he's like, "Guys, I duped," like 10 years later, he's like, "Guys, I duped you all.
Yeah.
Like you were behind on the technology. Now it's well known. I was using it before anyone knew about it." Like I think a little bit about the Lance Armstrong stuff.
Yep.
Everybody loved Lance Armstrong. He
Mhm.
starts dominating. And then you start to find out, like, oh, there's different techniques that he used to cheat. Then essentially other riders slowly caught on to, and then they're all trying to do the same thing. Like, there could be a Hans following at some point. Like, look at the Visu stuff.
Yep.
Those guys are friends. Like, who knows? There's a chance that maybe he's just a little ahead on the technology, and we have no clue what he's doing.
Yeah, do you mean like ahead on the technology, like skill wise or cheat wise?
Cheat wise, like he
Okay,
just has different methods that we have no clue how they work.
okay. Yeah, the only thing is there would have to be some sort of connection between like a contact lens and a phone relaying, like a relaying moves or something like that. And so I believe that would probably get picked up in a metal detector because you would need a computer chip. So I would have to think a metal detector would find it unless I don't know. I guess in the cheating event he got to keep his gum, so you could probably hide it in your gum. Who knows?
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't know how good those wands actually are. I've seen some mixed reviews.
okay,
Like I don't know if they can pick up real small things and how thorough they are there.
okay. All that said, though, we are Team Hans.
I
It's
mean, yeah, I do think he's clean. It's just fun to speculate what
yeah,
could be.
it is fun. It is fun. But Hans, if you're listening, we think you're clean. Please come on the podcast.
Right. And
Okay,
tell us what you're
so
doing.
yeah, tell us what you're doing. Spill the beans. How are you doing it? We know you're not this
Yeah.
good. How are you doing it? No, just kidding. So he goes from beating. Okay, let me actually gather my sources here.
Goes from beating Anish Giri to beating Stockfish straight up.
He goes from beating Anish Giri to 3 days later, he flies to London and he's facing off in the same format against Nikita Vichugov. I don't know how to say it. I think I just said it the exact same way.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounded right both times.
or wrong
Equally
both times.
equally correct.
And once again, he flies to the player, so he's flying to Nikita, and Nikita is a number one rated player in England. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm not right on that, but I think he's England's number one. And today they actually started with classical, and so they played 2 games of classical, 90 plus 30, and Hans won the first game as black, and he was pressing in the second game, but they kind of petered into a drawn rook and pawn endgame. But Hans picked up enough points to move into top 20 in the world. So live rating as of Wednesday, August 14th, is Hans number 20. I think he's tied for 20th with someone else.
Yeah,
So
with
he's
Parham Magsudlu.
oh Magsud. Okay, so he's gonna play. He played today. He's gonna play the next 3 days as well. Next 4 days as well. Then he flies from London to Paris uh, on 1 day rest and plays Etienne Bacrot. I don't know how to say these names, and he plays the exact same format again. So August 20th through the 24th for that one. And I mentioned on the last podcast, maybe 2 podcasts ago, that I thought he was playing Nihal Sarin. And in the initial tweet, he did say he was playing Nihal, but that event seems to have been canceled or something because it's not on his site anymore. And not only is he doing these, by the way, he puts out huge prize pools. So against a niche, I think it was a $50,000 prize pool, another 13,000 for the Vityukov match, and then another 18,000 for the Bakro match. So crazy numbers he's putting up. He's also making the broadcast free for anyone. So the video is available, the PGN stream is available, and it's free to go in and watch at the actual venue. So it really seems like he's doing this on some sort of redemption tour. Like, I am legit. I'm as good as I say I am. He, he jumped over backwards to put these matches together and get a ton of money out there to get people to play against him. I would like to see more of this type of thing, wouldn't you?
I would love to see it. And I was just looking at the stats. So Hans is 21 years old. He just had his birthday in June. If you look at the other players in the top 20, there's a 19-year-old Prague, there's a 19-year-old Noterbeck, and an 18-year-old Gukesh D, one other 21-year-old Ali Reza. So there's only 4 people younger than Hans in the top 20, which I think means he also has a lot of potential to be one of the next, let's say, top 5 players in the world.
Yeah, I think so too. He may just need to wait like 5 years, and a bunch of these like 2,800 35-year-olds are going to slowly drop, and he and the other like youngsters are going to rise to the top. It wouldn't be surprising to me if he qualifies for the candidates in the near future. Um,
That would be really cool to see.
yeah, for sure. I'd also love him to see. I'd also love him to do a match like against Naka, someone very strong. I don't think Naka has really anything to gain from doing it other than a prize pool. Who are other targets you think in the top 20? Um,
Wesley So might be a good one after the SCC.
yeah, Wesley
He's
might.
10th in the world.
Yeah, Wesley might do it. I don't think Vishy would do it. Probably someone like Gakeshme or Prague. Gakesh maybe like after the championship. Erigaisi, I could see doing it. Fabi, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I did miss Erigaisi. So he's probably, there's 5 players younger. Yeah, maybe Fabi. I could see that. It's got to be someone that really believes that he's a clean player, though.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people have had suspicions in the top group, and maybe that's sort of how he's picking and choosing who he plays. Like maybe he reached out to a lot of these top players, and Geary was the top one that was willing to do it.
yeah. So if we go through the top few, actually, let's actually do this. So I know Magnus obviously is suspicious of Hans. That's how this whole thing blew up. Naka, same. When all the Han stuff came out, he was very much on Team Magnus, and he said like Magnus wouldn't kind of just like blow his career up for nothing. I trust him. He basically agreed. He thought that um, that Hans was cheating at some point. Um, Number five, Jan, also very outspoken against Jan or against Hans. I think Jan is a bit like Kramnik, where he's a bit too quick to accuse people of cheating.
Yeah.
Fabiano though has said in his podcast that he thinks there's pretty much no chance that Hans was cheating in the game against Magnus, that he beat him.
But isn't Fabi also known for saying a lot of players are cheating right now? Like he thinks cheating is a pretty big problem, at least online.
Yeah, that is true. He thinks when he plays Title Tuesday, there's like a 50% chance he's going to face a cheater at some point. Like some of the games are just a
Hmm.
little weird for him, he says.
Anand would be cool. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but he's still 11th in the world.
Yep, for sure. Maybe like Lanier too. Who knows?
Yeah. He has actually gone for some younger players, though. I think everyone he's facing is age 30 or less so far, the three matches.
Oh yeah, is that right? I guess I don't know
Hmm.
how old Vichukov is.
I'm pretty sure I looked that up before.
Yeah, you did.
Vitugov is,
He's
oh, he's
37.
37. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Maybe they were all under 40. Maybe that's what it was.
And actually, I see Vichugov actually just dropped below the new number one for England, and that is David Howell. That's kind of cool.
Oh, nice.
I think David Howell still is like underrated. Like he's legit.
I have a question for you. So I agree that Hans is the heel in chess. And I think people love when the heel is at least close to the top, if not the top player in different sports and things, because like you don't want your heel, like the main heel, to be 50th in the world where it's like they can't compete with the top.
Yeah,
Um, Prior to Hans, who would you say was the closest player to being a heel? Because I think there was one.
I would say Naka.
Yeah, before he became a big streamer, I think he was the heel. Like he was the guy with the attitude. He would say some controversial things. And you kind of either love to watch him win or you love to watch him lose, one of the two. And now it's Hans is definitely that player.
Yeah. I can't really think of anyone else other than maybe like Ali Reza that would have some sort of interest in any of this. I mean, probably not even Ali Reza. I can't really because chess is such a gentleman's game. Like no one wants to be super brash and rude over the board.
Right.
I would feel super weird if I was like really rude to an opponent after a game or something like that. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I can see it, but this is their careers, and popularity can get you invites. So I don't know. It seems like Hans maybe uh, it's a bit more true to his personality than Colby Covington from the top of the hour. I think Colby is very much acting at all times when he's on camera. Hans, it seems a little more authentic. Like he's kind of authentically, I don't know, making drama.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, people do say he has maybe a fake accent sometimes and some different things, but I think it is sort of his personality to be a bit eccentric and it comes out as I don't know what the word for it is, but he becomes the heel because of just his natural personality.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
sometimes he's very genuine too.
Yeah, for sure. Although when he's doing stuff that's super genuine, it comes off as like he's trying to build his own image. Like he, at least at least in my opinion, like he sponsored a bunch of players into the World Rep and Blitz, and it just or was it the World Rep and some tournament, but with like Visu and all these people, and it just seemed like he was trying to be like, hey, look how good I am. Like I let these people in. I paid for their way in. Look how good I am.
Yeah, and didn't he have like a scholarship fund for kids or something for a
Yeah.
bit?
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's a bullseye right there.
Um, it is interesting because pre-social media era, like you said, it was just kind of this gentleman's game, and all that people cared about were your results.
Yep.
Whereas now, Hans is much more likely to get, well, as long assuming they don't care about his past allegations, a player like Hans, who has a big social media presence, is much more likely to get an invite than, say, Lanier Dominguez Perez, who you don't hear talk at all unless he's forced to after like a post game interview.
Yeah, for sure. So like in the past, the chess would speak for itself, and
Yes.
now you kind of have to
Great.
like speak for your chess, which is what Hans is doing. He's not letting the chess speak for himself. He's really letting himself speak for his chess. That's why he's got to set up all these matches.
Oh, maybe Gary Kasparov was a heel. I don't know.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
was maybe I wasn't quite old enough to follow him live, but he had that personality. And maybe even Bobby Fischer. It depends how you look at it. Like this is pre-social media era, so it's a little bit different. Like they're
yeah,
not doing it for the social media, but these are the players that I think tend to trigger one emotion, positive or negative, pretty strongly in the fans.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Um, yeah, so that is our Hans take. I don't think there's anything else on Hans as of right now, but he's got a few more days left against Vichukov, and then he's going right like 1 day rest. He's going to Paris, so like 1 day just to fly to Paris, and he is going to these people's place. I think that's the coolest thing. Like he's traveling to them, and he organized this whole thing. So he's definitely investing in himself. So that is pretty cool. Okay. After the Hans, do you want to talk my tournament? What do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, let's talk about your classical tournament that you just wrapped up.
Okay, yes, I went. So our chess club, they do classical tournaments where it's roughly 4 or 5 rounds, and they do them each Tuesday night until the tournament's over. So I was able to play round one, and I played a young man named Andy and won that game. He was pressing for quite a while, but I was never in serious trouble, and then ended up trading kind of into an end game and won the end game. Then round two, I was on vacation, so I took a bye. Round three, I got paired up against
Kevin.
Kevin. Yeah, and Kevin beat me fair and square. He kind of, I wouldn't say he crushed me, but I was never better even with the white pieces. So he kind of won the opening, and then had a good advantage, and then I kind of brought it back to equal, but it was hard to hold. And he won a queen and pawn endgame against me. So we both had a queen and a bunch of pawns. I think he was up a pawn for the majority of it. So he had a nice game against me and won. And so the game I won, I was about 200 points higher rated than my opponent. The game I lost, I was 200 points lower than my opponent. So it all came down to round four, which was really round three for me because I took the bye. And this was against Paul, who was my first ever OTB opponent. So it's kind of cool to go first to, I think that was game like 45 or something in my book. I'm almost out of games. Should we go through the game?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay, so I am playing Paul and I have the black pieces. And he gets into a pretty bad position right out of the opening, honestly. So he plays the London, and I gotta say, my this whole tournament, I feel like I was playing pretty well. Like, I was seeing the board really well. I felt really comfortable over the board. But in these first few moves, I was like lost. Like I couldn't even remember my normal move here. Like, do I play my,
Really.
yeah, I'm like, do I play my bishop out? Am I playing e6? Like, if I play c5, I think that's too early. And I was just in my head. And probably took like, at this point, I'm probably down like 3 minutes already. Like, I just was not feeling it. I'm like, man, this is not going to go well. Even here,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, do I bring my knight out or my bishop out first? Like, I couldn't even remember. So, not feeling confident.
What's your main system? Do you do that bishop d6, queen e7 line from the chess goals repertoire or no?
No, I
Against the
don't do
London?
that line. I just basically play an
Okay.
early c5 and queen b6. I don't really have like okay, don't tell my chess opponents, but I don't really have a repertoire I study against d4. I just kind of like have the moves I like to play and go for it.
Okay.
So I think this is all normal though. I'm not sure. So knight bd2 leads to a pretty awkward position after queen b6 because there's really not a good way to defend the pawn in a good way.
Is that a standard pawn sack line? There is a pawn sack line that goes with knight d2 prior to c3. It might
Yeah,
be this line.
yes, it is a standard pawn sack line, but you really have
Okay,
to be able. I mean, another way to not sack the pawn is to take here and then just kind of live with these pawns.
that's right.
And I, of course, saw this in the game, and I thought, okay, I'm thrilled about these because these pawns are going real quick. Get my bishop out. I don't even see how this pawn is holdable. I guess maybe knight out, but then you have to live with this check. So I thought I was actually like -1 here, but I wasn't. But that's not what happened in the game. So in the game, he goes knight b3, and um, I have never seen this before. So like this is brand new territory for me. And the only thing I'm thinking is c4 seems normal to kick the knight and win the pawn. And I know that sometimes you play c4 in these lines to like shut the bishop out. So I figured like that's got to be the right move. And I end up playing it, and it's actually, I'm looking at the engine right now. It's actually the only move that keeps equality. And I'm thinking too, this pawn is actually attacked, so I can't just play e6 and then give up my dark square bishop. That seems very wrong.
Good call. Yep.
Yeah, so c4 is a right move, and he actually jumps in. So knight c5. It looks aggressive, but this knight really doesn't have much scope here. Like, he can't really do anything here, but I assumed his plan was I take, he brings a rook over, and he's on the b pawn. And so I'm looking through this and kind of just realizing I have this check here with tempo, and I can play b6. So I actually saw this whole line in the game. So this isn't quite how the game goes. So check here, take, b6. And I was a little worried about someday if he like comes the bishop b5 because this knight is a little undefended. But even the bishop comes through. So I feel like there was nothing to worry about here at all. And Engine is agreeing with me. So this is actually saying I'm like -3. Um, okay, and so he comes in and I take the pawn. There has been very few times in this tournament where I have been surprised at an opponent's move, which is a very good sign. I think there's only like one or two moves I can really think of that surprised me.
Mhm.
And coming up, this is one. So I thought there's only one move to be played, and that was queen d2. And I could get the queens off. And I thought I was good. I totally did not see, and I mean, obviously he can move the king up, but I just assumed that was terrible. But I totally did not see that he can play knight d2. And this is good. This is holdable, but I was thinking, okay, my queen's getting like a little squeezed here. Like, you know, luckily my pawn is here. Luckily my pawn is here, so knight or the rook can never come up and like harass me and really try to trap my queen. So I was like very aware of not getting my queen too trapped, tied
Yeah.
in.
And when it comes to surprises, I like to think because there's so many possible moves on the chessboard. Like for example, you just rule out king e2 intuitively.
Hmm.
I like to think, was the move a good surprise or a bad surprise? If it's a bad surprise, that's where you got to figure out like how do I spot those moves? If it's a move that's worse than anything you expected or just neutral, I always feel that's fine because at some point you have to just stop looking at their candidate moves.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's only been a few bad surprises. I would consider this one a bad surprise because I didn't see it at all. I didn't think he could even block with a knight. I was just like
Okay.
so, and it also brings his knight close to my queen, which gets a little scary, like potential queen trapping ideas. Okay, so he's on my b pawn, so I play b6 just to kick his knight out. He goes knight over, and obviously my queen is under attack, and I have two squares available. These two squares. What is your first instinct? Which one do you feel like you would go to?
Oh, that's a great question. Um,
Because because
I mean, I
once
liked it.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
one square seems way more obvious to me. The other square seems way worse.
If you go to a5, your route to get back is most likely queen a6, queen b7, and go back that way. If you go
Yeah.
to a3, you could try to bring your queen back to e7, and then maybe you put your dark bishop out through g7. So my instincts say queen a3, but I don't know.
Yeah, my instincts said queen a3 as well because I'm also hitting this pawn as a bonus. And
Hmm.
then I saw that he couldn't really kick me out here. Like he would want to bring his knight back to b1, but obviously his rook is there. So I was actually going to play e6 and bishop d6 and trade off these
Oh,
dark
sure.
square bishops. So that was my idea. So yeah, I played queen a3, like you were saying, and I'm hitting the knight, and I thought there was really only one move to stay in the game because I am attacking this knight. He can't really come here. I thought the only move here was c3 to defend the knight because knight can't really come in anywhere, and if he goes back here, he gets forked.
Yep.
I guess the fork isn't maybe not so good, but he just hangs the piece, so knight c3, and
Oh,
yeah, and so I don't think he saw this. um, so unfortunate for him, but I just win a free piece. And from here, it's a pretty smooth conversion, honestly. So we don't need to go through a ton of these moves, but this is only move 11. And actually, the last time I played Paul, he straight up hung a piece like this, and so he's rated 1300, but he's never gonna. I feel like he can play like a 1500, but he sometimes just drops these pieces. Like you got to see that my queen just left there, you know,
yeah.
that same square, and he has 55 minutes on his clock at this point too.
So he's maybe playing a little too quick too.
Yeah. So we can go through just to see how to convert this smoothly. I feel like I had a pretty good conversion here. So he develops, and I really like this move because it forces off a couple pieces. I was also thinking knight b4 and just attacking this pawn, but kind of just didn't seem worth it for me. So
Yeah, I like this. Knight e4.
yeah. So rook up, he's hitting this pawn. I could sack the pawn, but kind of why bother at this point? I was also thinking about bishop a6, just kind of annoying the rook, but that he would take that pawn. So he kicks my knight, which I actually think is smart because otherwise his king is stuck and I can just hold this forever. So I just trade down this way.
Oh, you had a threat there too. So if he doesn't go f3, you're gonna go bishop b4
Oh
and
yeah,
triple attack his knight.
bishop b4 was my idea too. Okay, so bishop a3, and so the rook's got to go somewhere, and he goes here. What's the winning move? I mean,
I feel like
it's already winning, but it's winning even more with a good move here.
c3 check.
Yeah, c3 check.
It's it's funny that was my first thought, but I for some reason didn't see the bishop on e2 being attacked. So I was trying to make it work in other ways. Then I'm like, oh, that bishop's
Yeah.
hanging.
And what's great about this move is like let's say my bishop is here. I still may play this move because this c4 square is so juicy for the knight. Like
Oh
I was thinking so like let's say he actually moves back here. I would still probably play this honestly because he can't take. So he goes here, take take.
yeah,
My knight gets here and it's never leaving.
yep, I like that.
So it's good tactically and positionally. So here I am up. Wait, that wasn't the move. So he goes here, rook b2. I win another piece. And from here, it's just kind of all gravy. Um, okay, yeah, here's one decision I made. So I'm giving up 2 pieces for the rook, but I'm already up 2 pieces. I just want to get some pieces off. And only other
Makes sense.
really interesting decision is taking with the e-pawn to open things up a little more and have a couple more open files for my rooks.
Yeah, and you're gonna challenge his rook, which offers another trade.
Yeah. And so he tries to keep material on, and here I just go to Sacktown and win this pawn in game. So this is pretty easy once the A pawn is running. Just make sure not to stalemate. And it took me a while to actually find a good checkmate here, but this worked. And he played a checkmate, so that was the end of the tournament. And
Nice.
yeah, so nice win there. And I was able to pick up 10 rating points. So I started 1518, and now I'm at 1528. So decent gain there. And I think I still have some more rating I can gain. I have to say, too, I did not really do any prep at all for this tournament. I looked a little bit at some Caro lines in round one, but my second game, round two, I was white. I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with e4, which I probably shouldn't have because I got busted in the opening. But round so this game, I knew that historically Paul had played d4 against me, and I knew I didn't have anything to study there, so I just kind of went into the game. Didn't really do any tactics or anything either. Um, Yeah, overall,
So
this
50,
was a yeah, this is a good tournament. I'm happy with how I played. It was fun, and I wasn't super nervous all the time, which is good.
I mean, that's huge for you.
Yeah,
Just having fun, being calm, 15-28. And I think this is the start of your comeback, hopefully. So get some more games going. And I agree with you. I think you got a couple 100 points probably on the table.
yep. So I want to keep playing some more, and I think what I really need to do is just keep getting really good at tactics. Just keep drilling tactics. My openings are pretty solid. My instincts are pretty good. Maybe some positional play and just a lot of tactics. And I think I can keep gaining because when I'm playing over the board, I don't make a lot of like really simple mistakes that I lose in blitz a lot.
And do you have any good websites you would recommend for working on your tactics?
I would recommend train.chessgoals.com. And if you want to practice your positional play too, we have Guess the Eval. That was fun. It's been fun seeing some people sign up for it. Train.chessgoals.com. And just this morning, I shipped a feature to recover your password if you forgot it. We shipped without it, but it is there now.
So everyone for click that link and then let Jesse know if it doesn't work
Yeah.
all at once.
Yes, everyone at the same time. Okay, anything else you wanted to go over today, Matt?
I don't think so. This was good. I noticed in Discord we're getting some pickleball paddle questions, so maybe we'll have to have a little pickleball chat on a future podcast.
Yes, we should. We always sprinkle a little pickleball in. It seems like most episodes. Next episode, Matt is going to be flying solo, unless Matt maybe can organize a guest. We'll have to see.
Mhm.
But maybe some pickleball tips and tricks. Next episode is going to be filming in a few days here on
Ooh.
Sunday. Thank you all for joining. This has been no pun intended. As always, if you like what you hear and you want to give us a pat on the back, a like, a subscribe, a rating goes a long way. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.